Empathy is not a moment or a checklist item in a busy leader's day. It is not a soft skill that only some people need. No, it is the strong spine of human leadership. It is the underlying support that creates relationships and results. You're listening to the Well-Led Podcast from 123 Limited. This is your host, Kate Johnson. We've spent the last 3 weeks examining empathy, and here are some of the big ideas from our notes and conversations so far. We've defined empathy as striving to understand another person's experience. It is both thought and feeling, and encompasses affective empathy, your emotional response to someone else's feelings, and cognitive empathy, your effort to grasp their perspective. Additionally, we have to understand that empathy is not automatic kindness. It requires discipline. It asks leaders to be curious, to imagine what work looks like from another person's point of view, and to adjust their communication accordingly. Empathy is about being intentional in how you engage with people so they can thrive and perform. We've also established that listening and presence are the foundation. In every conversation, empathy shows up first as listening, not fixing, not interrupting, not turning the focus back to yourself. You know that leaders are often wired to solve problems quickly. Empathy asks them to slow down and be fully present, to sit with someone's experience without rushing to control it. It's become clear through our exploration that empathy strengthens results. It does not remove responsibility or weaken accountability. Leaders can care deeply about a person's experience while still expecting ownership, excellence, and performance. In fact, empathy improves performance because it allows leaders to understand what is actually happening beneath behavior. When employees feel understood, they are more likely to communicate honestly, adapt during change, and engage fully in their work. Empathy also encourages more empathy across a team, creating a culture of trust and collaboration. Empathy is not lowering the bar. It is understanding people well enough to help them meet it. We've attempted to reveal this truth. Empathy is the disciplined effort to understand another person's experience so you can lead them with clarity, trust, and effectiveness. So why another week devoted to the same topic? As I've shared, I want to provide you with a final look at the current month's competency, to share a lesson in effectiveness that makes the concepts we've discussed so far wildly applicable, to answer the question, what does this look like at work? And this means naming the essential mindsets and observable behaviors that distinguish empathetic leaders. So to start, here are a handful of straightforward ways to think about your employees, colleagues, and clients. The first, I am here to help you do your best work. Second, I don't know your whole story. Third, you have an inner life, just like I do. Fourth, I can't read your mind, but I can get curious about your thoughts and feelings. And last, empathy is the skill that connects my role as a leader to your abilities and performance. When we adopt mindsets like these, it directly informs our actions. When I think, I'm here to help you, I naturally take steps to support your success. This can include ensuring you have the tools, training, and other resources you need, or being clear about performance expectations and withholding judgment when mistakes happen. Even delivering feedback becomes a logical demonstration of this mindset. When I approach you with mindsets that remind me that you have an inner, unknowable life, I can be respectful and curious. When I set my mind to viewing empathy as essential to leadership, I choose actions like perspective taking, asking questions, and confirming expectations. All of these allow me to understand you and demonstrate that I care about understanding you. This month's Leaders Toolkit will expand on some practical behaviors and techniques to reinforce empathy, like tips for effective check-ins and reflection questions to improve how you acknowledge people's thoughts, feelings, and experiences in the moment. You can request your copy using the link in the show notes. Established subscribers will receive this and future toolkits automatically. Leadership empathy is holistic. It involves both thought and feeling. It requires you to rely on emotional intelligence in equal measure with critical thinking and business acumen. And this means there are some additional considerations for human leaders to pay attention to. I want to spend a little time on two of these that I think are non-negotiable in the modern workplace. We've touched on the first in other moments this month, but it matters so much. I want to dedicate more time and energy to it. Accountability. I've known leaders who argue that empathy is the same as leniency. They believe that empathetic workplaces can't get results, when in fact, empathy makes kind, direct feedback more effective. When you have felt a response in yourself to another's emotions and behaviors, it opens the door to accurate problem diagnosis, as well as the other necessary aspects of creating accountability. We will spend more time on accountability later this year, but it's so central to leading well that I like to talk about it whenever it comes up in relation to other topics. The real issue here is not how people view empathy, it's our attitude toward an understanding of accountability that's all twisted. Accountability is not punishment. This is the very first thing to know and accept. Anyone who wields accountability like a stick to drive employees with fear and threats is not a leader. I don't care what title they hold. They are not leaders. They are bullies. This is, in no small part, because accountability is a process, not a moment. It is initiated by the leader to give an employee the structure and support to do their work. It is a scaffold or skeleton that holds everything together. I said earlier that empathy is the strong spine of human leadership. You may notice that structure, spine, scaffold, these are essentially the same metaphor. And if it's true that empathy supports leadership and accountability supports performance, then accountability and empathy are intrinsically connected. True accountability lives in the presence of understanding, cognitive and emotional understanding of an employee's abilities and needs. You cannot have accountable teams without empathy. Empathetic accountability says, I want to understand your experience. I still expect you to do the work. So let's figure out how to make that possible. That combination, care plus clarity, is what drives results. You see, leniency is not kind, nor is it empathetic. Feeling bad for an employee isn't empathy either. It is pity. Pity does not get results. What does get results is the mental and emotional discipline to set clear expectations, observe and respond to employees in the act of doing their work, proactively taking their perspective to understand challenges and needs, and providing relevant feedback at each step, both to recognize and redirect the employee's efforts. Empathy lives in these moments of direct leadership and day-to-day management. Empathetic leaders embrace genuine accountability, and leaders who practice true accountability grasp the importance of empathy. I believe it is also important in this conversation to include the needs of neurodivergent employees and leaders. We are fortunate in the modern workplace that we have more awareness of and language to talk about neurodivergence. It is important for leaders to recognize this on their own teams and to make the effort to engage cognitive empathy in an attempt to better understand these employees. The same could be said for neurodivergent leaders who can approach situations where employees exhibit high emotions with curiosity and imagination. Now, I do not have expertise in this area. I want to proceed with care and respect as I discuss this consideration. And with that in mind, here are a couple of points and pieces of information I discovered in my research that I want to share today. I found information that stated individuals with autism or other categories of non-typical neurological setup may not show activity in the parts of the brain where we find mirror neurons, which would impact their experience of feeling empathy. But this doesn't mean they have no empathy. There is still much debate and conflicting evidence about the neurodivergent capacity to experience both affective and cognitive empathy. As a casual researcher, I saw articles that claimed autistic individuals can experience cognitive empathy, but not affective, and articles that stated the opposite. I think we can glean two salient points from this. The first being that we have only just scratched the surface of understanding how our minds produce empathy and other emotional experiences. But we can look forward to more discoveries and greater knowledge in the years and decades to come. The second point is this. The real lesson for leaders is to recognize that individual needs, preferences, and thinking will vary. Whether your employee is neurotypical or not, your job is to learn what they need from you through an ongoing conversation about their preferences, strengths, and needs. This is not to say that you don't need to acknowledge the differences and adapt your approach. You have the gift of starting with a baseline of set leadership actions, though, acknowledging that each person is unique, committing to understanding them, consciously engaging empathy at every step, and being willing to adapt your approach when necessary. I also learned of the double empathy problem theory in my search. I've provided a few links for anyone wanting to read more. This term was coined by Dr. Damian Milton, who talks about it this way. Simply put, the theory of the double empathy problem suggests that when people with very different experiences of the world interact with one another, they will struggle to empathize with each other. By my lights, this is a leadership truth. Anytime we encounter and work with people who do not share our experiences, there will be a barrier to understanding. We've all experienced this. Shared experiences create mutual frames of reference, a shorthand. The absence of this shorthand can easily lead to confusion and misunderstanding. Our differing experiences can be as minor as attending different schools, or as significant as being raised in a different country, or being neurologically wired in different ways. The theory of the double empathy problem affirms the need for leaders to start with the understanding that everyone on your team is unique. Diversity among teams is a strength, and it presents certain challenges. Challenges that are readily overcome with simple acts like being curious, consistent touch points, and respecting people's differences. What is important is to put the effort toward understanding, to strive to understand. Here's the lesson I want you to take away from this episode. Empathy does take effort, but that effort happens in the shape of simple acts of mindfulness. In your leadership, you can integrate or enhance empathy with subtle mindset shifts, like, I'm here to help you do your best work. You can be deliberate to approach moments of friction and poor communication with the reminder that differences can impede understanding, so that you can remain open and curious. You can view accountability as a means of demonstrating empathy, rather than as command or punishment. Again, each of these choices will take effort, time, energy, and thought, but each will produce results: efficient communication, deeper understanding, and reliable performance. This is how empathy allows you to lead with clarity, trust, and effectiveness. The latest companion toolkit is now available, Leading with Empathy, Practical Techniques for Sustainable Leadership. Check the show notes for a link to request your copy. And as always, if this episode was useful, you can support the show by following or subscribing on your preferred podcast platform, or by sharing it with someone who's navigating similar leadership challenges. We'll be back next Tuesday with the first episode exploring our next essential leadership competency needed for demonstrating care: good humor. I'm tickled that next month will feature a few of my favorite past coworkers, and I'm excited to share what they have to say with you. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.